So what is a bridging loan? How does bridging finance work? Let's explain bridging loans in detail, and by the end of this video, hopefully you're confident on what a bridging loan is and when to use it. Welcome back, my name is Marco, I'm a property investor, developer and mentor, and today we're talking about bridging loans. I'm going to explain the A to Z of bridging loans, what they are and when you should consider using a bridging loan. So first of all, we're going to talk about what is a bridging loan. Well, a bridging loan is a form of short-term finance. It's as simple as that, and what will happen is it's similar to a mortgage. The lender will take a charge on the property and lend you the funds, and normally they'll lend you these funds for a matter of months or maybe a year or slightly over a year, but typically no longer than that. We're talking months here, and they'll charge you interest on a monthly basis, whereas normal mortgages normally charge you interest on an annual basis. So with bridging, the lender is more concerned about the property rather than you as an individual or you as a company. So your income really isn't that important. What's important is the property itself. Do the numbers stack, and what is the value of that property? Similarly, bridging lenders are more flexible when it comes to the source of the deposit for this purchase. Again, we know normal mortgage lenders don't like if you borrow the deposit from someone else, whereas bridging lenders are very open and very flexible to this. One other thing, bridging finance is also very, very fast. You can secure bridging finance in a matter of days, where a typical standard normal mortgage may take weeks, if not months. And this is one reason why bridging finance is so powerful, especially when buying at auction, when you more or less have to complete within 28 days. Now, bridging finance, as a result of all these benefits, is more expensive when compared, and we're going to come on to the costs later in the video and go through an example. So we've briefly described what bridging finance is. Let's move on to why you should consider using bridging finance and when is the perfect time to use it. So it's best to use bridging finance when you can add value to a property and you want to exit that deal within a matter of months or maybe a year. So as long as you can add value in the short term, do consider bridging finance, and I'm going to go on to give you two examples on how this may work. Well, first of all, let's say you're adding value by fixing a problem. You come across a property, it has a problem, and therefore it's currently not mortgageable. So you can't buy this property with a normal, typical standard mortgage. And as a result, bridging finance or cash are their only options to acquire this property. For example, let's say you come across a property, it has no kitchen or no bathroom, and therefore it's not classed as habitable, and therefore normal mortgage lenders are not willing to lend on the property. So you've got two options, cash or bridging. So let's say you opt for bridging, and let's say you buy the property, you secure the bridging finance, you put in a new kitchen, you put in a new bathroom, the property is now habitable. Well, all of a sudden now, not only have you increased the value, but you can approach other lenders, mainstream normal mortgages, and transition from your bridging finance to normal, cheaper traditional mortgages. So you fix that problem, you've added the value, and that's a perfect example of when you should consider using bridging finance. So to summarize here, bridging finance is really good if you come across problematic properties that have a solution. So there are many different types of strategies in this particular area in terms of finding properties with several problems, fixing those problems, and then either refinancing or selling. And in that first instance, you're using bridging finance to acquire the property. So bridging finance is really good if you can add value to a property and then exit that transaction in a matter of months or maybe 1 year maximum. Now, there are typically two exits. The first, as we've already alluded to, is where, let's just say we've bought a property, we've done something to it to add the value, and we can remortgage, and we're remortgaging away from the expensive short-term bridging finance to a normal standard mortgage, which is cheaper because this property is now mortgageable. The other option is, of course, is via sale. So we bought the property in the first instance with bridging finance, we've fixed the problem or added the value or done whatever we needed to do, and now we're selling the property, and by selling the property we can then pay off the bridging finance. So there are two main ways on how to exit bridging finance. But not only that, properties that require a fast completion. So of course, it goes without saying that bridging finance naturally accompanies auction properties, because when you're buying at auction, normally you have only 28 days to complete on the purchase of the property. And therefore bridging finance is great to step in at short notice and secure you funding on any auction purchases. So again, we can use this even outside the auction. If we've got a vendor and they want to complete in weeks, again, bridging finance is a great tool in our toolbox to opt for and to choose in order to acquire this property. Okay, so that's a little bit about why use bridging finance and when to use it. Let's come on to the costs. So it goes without saying that the costs are far more expensive than your traditional standard mortgage, okay? And bridging is slightly different because the interest is on a monthly basis, whereas, as you know, with typical mortgages, that's more on an annual basis. So, what kind of costs can I expect, Marco? Well, every lender's a little bit different, but if you can work to about 1% per month, you're not going to go too far wrong. And again, if you think about 1% per month, let's say you got it for 1 year. I mean, you could have it for less, but let's just make the math easy. Well, you're looking at about 12% interest, roughly speaking. Now, normally there are other fees to account for as well. There could be setup fees, there could be exit fees, you could have broker fees, and this could increase that 12% to maybe about 15%. So it's really important that you know what you're getting yourself in for and that you approach a broker who specializes in bridging, because there are a lot of bridging lenders out there and their fees and rates vary wildly. So let's go through an example together, and this is a real life example that I did only a couple of weeks ago. I came across a property in my target area and it wasn't mortgageable because it had Japanese knotweed in the garden. And for those of you who don't know, typical mortgage lenders despise Japanese knotweed. Okay, the trend is becoming a bit more positive, a bit more favourable over time, but still, it's not easy to get a normal mortgage. Now, Japanese knotweed is quite particular because there are different risks and levels of Japanese knotweed from 1 to 4. And if you're at the highest risk, it's very difficult to get a normal mortgage. And this property did not qualify for a normal mortgage at the moment. So in other words, it was only open to cash or bridging. And I opted to purchase this property with bridging finance. So let's go over the numbers. So this particular property was in the auction and I was willing to go up to £150,000 for this property. Now, I'd already spoken to a bridging lender and I'd already kind of got my decision in principle, so I knew what my costs were going to be. Now, again, they'd have to come out and survey the property before actually lending on it, but from their desktop research, they were happy to lend on it. So I was asking for £120,000, bearing in mind the purchase price is £150,000, or that was what I was willing to go to maximum. But here's a really interesting thing. The value of this property is certainly a lot higher than £150,000, and bridgers can lend on the market value of the property rather than the purchase price. And this is really, really key. And I'm going to mention this again in the video because it's such an important concept to understand. Bridging lenders can lend based on the market value, not the purchase price. So if you're buying a property below market value, you can ask them to lend on the higher market level, and that means you need to put less cash in the deal to make that happen. It's really, really important. I was wanting to go to £150,000 on this property. I asked for £120,000 cash, which on the purchase price is an 80% loan to value. But actually, as I've alluded to, the value of this property, even with the problems, was above £150,000. And that's why the bridging lenders were okay to lend this based on essentially an 80% loan to value, which is a very high loan to value. But really, I argued that the market value of this property was closer to £180,000. So I was asking for £120,000 and the rate I was given was 0.8% per month. And if you do the figures, it works out about £960 per month in interest. So let's just call it £1,000 per month in interest every month I'm on this bridging finance. So it's quite expensive, and this can add up, especially if your exits are delayed. Now, my plan with this property was to fix the issue. I mean, it was already nearly fixed. I just had to carry out the very last bit. Maybe I'd have to hold on this property for about 1 year for the treatment plan to stop, and then I could approach normal mortgage lenders. So I was factoring holding this property for about 1 year and then refinancing. So again, we can go through the figures. 960, let's just make the math really easy. Call it £1,000 per month in interest times 12, that's £12,000. Now, there were other costs to think about as well. There was a product fee of £1,500. There was also an administration fee of £500, but there were no exit fees with this particular deal. So you're looking at £1,000 per month, say over 12 months, that's £12,000, plus £2,000 in fees, plus a little to my broker as well. So it basically works out just under £15,000 I'm paying in total costs over the year for this short-term bridging finance. And again, once you factor it into the work required to the property and the costs, and then the potential value of the property at the end of the day, this was all really feasible and it was a great profit margin. So my exit strategy here was to refinance the property at a higher higher value. But really important, don't just have one exit strategy when you're buying a property on bridging finance, because if that exit strategy is no longer feasible, then all of a sudden you may be stuck on that short-term, really expensive bridging finance, and you don't want to be stuck on that for years. I can tell you that right now. I've come across people stuck on bridging finance for years, and really it's not a position you want to be in. So my other exit strategy was to sell the property. So again, once all the work had been completed, I could sell the property rather than refinance. Either way, I was making really good money. I had two really good options, and if one of those options was no longer feasible, I could back up to the other. So again, I had two options. So a really good tip for you here is to make sure you have at minimum two options, two exit strategies if you're buying a property with bridging finance. And these are the two most common exit strategies off bridging finance. That's either refinancing onto standard, normal long-term mortgage, or by selling the property. Okay, so that's an example to follow through, but now I've got 5 really important considerations you need to think about if you're thinking about obtaining bridging finance. And in no particular order, first of all, consider using a solicitor that has experience in bridging finance, because bridging finance isn't like a normal standard mortgage. Okay, it's a little bit more complex. So maybe don't approach your standard go-to solicitor if they don't have bridging finance experience. You know, maybe find a solicitor that actually has done, you know, many bridging finance transactions, and they're confident and well versed in all the terms that come along with bridging finance. Second tip I've got for you is pretty much the same, but when it comes to the brokering side, again, you don't want to go to your normal buy-to-let mortgage broker to obtain bridging finance. Bridging finance is a whole different industry, and because rates are so expensive, you know, if you've got a good broker that can save you even 0.2%, that's a substantial sum when you look at that on an annual basis. So speak to a broker that specializes in bridging finance, because guarantee they'll be able to save you money and deliver more value than your normal buy-to-let mortgage broker. Okay, third, this is more of a caution. Bridging finance is a bit more on an advanced tool to purchase properties. And again, this is because of this, it's higher risk. You know, you've really got to think about your exit strategies if you're planning on purchasing a property with bridging finance. As I mentioned before, always have at least 2 exit strategies, because if that's narrowed down to 1, that's fine. But if you've only got 1 strategy and you're simply relying on maybe selling the property and it doesn't sell for whatever reason, you can be stuck on this bridging finance paying really expensive rates, and that's a position that no one wants to be in. Okay, number 4, you can actually borrow 100% of the funds required to buy and renovate a property using bridging finance. And I'm going to come on to explain this in tip number 5. And I've already mentioned this before, and this is so powerful I'm going to repeat myself here. Bridging lenders are willing to lend based on the market value, not the purchase price. So again, let's make a really easy example to follow through with. Let's say a property is worth £100,000. Let's say for whatever reason you've agreed to buy this property at £60,000. Well, that's a 60% loan to value, or really loan to the value of the property, the market value of the property. Now, a bridging lender is going to be more than happy to lend based on 60% loan to value. So they'd actually give you all the money to buy the property. And let's just say it even costs an extra 5 or 10 grand to turn this property around. Well, that only increases it to £65,000–70,000 total cost, which again in the loan to value terms is 65 to 70%. So these types of loan to values, bridging lenders are more than happy to lend on. And again, if you find these deals where you're buying it, you know, at say 60% of the market value, typically speaking, you don't have to put in any money at all, or a very little amount of money, because that bridging lender is willing to lend you not only the purchase price, but again the cost to refurb the property, because they're willing to lend on the market value of the property, which is up here, and not the purchase price, which may be down here. So you've decided you may be opting for bridging finance. Maybe you've come across a property that is perfect to be acquired via bridging finance. How do you even go about getting bridging finance? Well, you've got to find a really good bridging broker. And if you don't already have a broker that specializes in obtaining bridging finance, head to my website, www.ms7.uk. Click on Use Our Team, and I'll put you in touch with the bridging broker that I use personally. I recommend, I know, I like, I trust, and I'll make sure they'll look after you. So I hope this video has delivered some value to you. And if you're still struggling to understand bridging finance and how to purchase properties using bridging finance, and really purchase properties with as little money or as little as your own money as possible, again, head to my website, ms7.uk, book a call with me. I'm more than happy to take you through the process and tell you exactly the full process, the A to Z, and how to purchase properties using bridging finance and put in as little possible cash as you possibly can. I hope you've enjoyed the video. As you know, every Tuesday and Thursday at 2 o'clock, I release a full-length video, so please do consider subscribing to the channel. YouTube tells me the majority of people watching this channel are not subscribed, do me a favour, it does mean a lot to me. Consider subscribing and let's help this channel grow. So thank you very much for watching, and I wish you all the very best in your property investing day. Goodbye.